guys is there are basically two types of law for the most part. There is civil law and criminal law. And what I thought we could do is, I made up some cases. These are completely, totally made up. And so it's just a little worksheet. I'm gonna pass those out. I want you guys to look at the worksheet, look at the cases, and figure out whether that case is civil or criminal and why. So in each one, I want you to figure out whether it's civil or criminal and why, and then there are some other questions that I put in there. Like the first one, I created Brown Miller versus Hogan, MD. It's a medical malpractice case. You need to also say who is the plaintiff and who is the defendant, okay? So just read the directions carefully, and you guys can work with each other. Just spend a couple minutes taking some notes and jotting some things down on the handout. Okay, so one clue. The names are listed in a particular order. So Brown Miller versus Hogan, it's listed in a way that, excuse me, one of them is the plaintiff and one of them is the defendant. So you need to be able to figure out what does it mean to be the plaintiff, what does it mean to be the defendant, and who is who in the case. All right, so, all right, let's take the first one, Brown Miller versus Hogan, medical malpractice. So who is the plaintiff and who's the defendant? I think you guys everybody got this right. The plaintiff is listed first, and the defendant is listed second, because the plaintiff is the one who is taking the case. Or in the case of it being the state, it would be called, not a plaintiff, but the state is called if you're a criminal, you're being accused, you're being prosecuted. Yeah, so it would be the prosecutor. Okay, the prosecutor versus the defendant. Okay, all right, so in Brown Miller versus Hogan, it's medical malpractice, and which type of law is it? Civil.
I thought you said ours was all right.
I didn't see that you wrote down criminal.
But how come in Law and Order then, when like a doctor does, no seriously though, when like a doctor like kills somebody for whatever, giving them like the wrong stuff and all that, they like go to a criminal court and like all that, and it's in like Law and Order criminal intent. Like, why is this? Why is it not like civil?
I think you can probably have criminal malpractice, because you can be, I mean, the key word, and this is what has to go back to the sidewalk, is negligent. What does that word mean, you guys? Negligent.
Careless?
Okay, yeah, it means careless. So, or it means that you completely ignored some sort of obligation that you have. And for example, an obligation that you have is to clean your sidewalks. That's one thing that you're supposed to do. And that is what is known as a tort. There are obligations inherent to social life. So basically what that means is that there's certain things that you need to do to keep other people safe. I mean, think about it, you guys. Every single time there's a snowstorm, what does TAF do? Shovels. I mean, immediately. I mean, we've got, our grounds crews out there like an army out there, clearing as much.
Falls, so would you technically sue TAF for fall?
Well, you can sue them, but the thing is you have to prove that they were negligent. That TAF, really did a poor job, and that their negligence led you to fall, and you have to have suffered some significant harm or injury.
Is that like whole side over there?
might win the money that would allow you to go to college, perhaps.
What if you lose your scholarship while you're in college because you hurt yourself while you're playing their sport?
No, that's not, but the school that is a negligent. Somebody had, see?
You can
Somebody
keep your
has to be-
scholarship also in that case, they wouldn't take your scholarship away if you got hurt playing the sport.
Okay. So, I mean, so that's why Taft is very careful, and there are gonna be certain things where, you know, like obviously the way the weather's been this year, it's been so crazy between the snow and the ice and the rain, that, you know, there's a certain level of expectation that you're supposed to meet, in order to, you know, make sure that the place is safe. And take for example, if you go skiing in Vermont, I mean, usually sign a contract, there's always signs up that say ski at your own risk, so that you're then not gonna sue Okemo when you fall and break your leg. You know, you can't blame them because you hit a bump, or there was a stump or something like that.
Also really certain like rapper, like skydive, you have to sign.
Yeah, exactly, you have to sign all kinds of waivers in those circumstances, because obviously it'd be really easy to get hurt and then sue those companies. Nowadays, as you guys know, you probably heard about the case of the woman who went to McDonald's and ordered a cup of coffee and for some reason did not have a cup holder in her car, so she put the coffee between her legs, drove out and hit a bump and spilled the coffee over her legs and got really serious burns because McDonald's heats their coffee to some ridiculously hot degree. And so she sued McDonald's and won some like humongous settlement of money. And now, as you know, anytime you get coffee from anywhere, what does the coffee cup say? Caution, contents are hot. Exactly. So that you now know and you can't claim
That sounds like you heard it.
that you didn't know. Now that's, I mean, I know, you guys, that's
Do you,
a
like,
ridiculous
sue the
example.
road for like having a bump? Like, I mean, I don't know. Or
Well,
is it
again, you could sue the
road?
state if they were negligent in
I mean,
repairing the road.
yeah, like,
So that's the thing, I mean, you can't just decide to sue for any, you know, absolute reason. And one thing we're gonna talk about next week with the Supreme Court justice is the idea of standing. You have to have been injured, you have to have suffered something in order to actually take a lawsuit. You can't make a hypothetical case like, okay, if I were to fall on my way to the library and get hurt, you know, this could be bad, so I'm gonna just sue Taft. I actually have had to have fallen on my way to the library in order to be able to sue Taft. So, I mean, this woman was significantly hurt.
Does it only involve physical damage, or can it involve?
No, it could be mental, yeah, and that's one of the things.
So scary.
Well, I mean, no, you would have suffered, you know, mental repercussions as part of another accident. Okay? Alright, so, alright, so that's what tort law is. And then the other one, Martin versus Martin, a divorce case, that's an example of which law?
contract.
Yes, it's civil law, it's an example of a contract. I mean, all the time, people get into contracts, not just marriage, but obviously there are business contracts. There are, you know, when you sign a contract when you come to Taft.
Social contract.
There's a social contract. And so anytime you want to break any sort of contract, whether it's a business contract or a divorce, you've got to go to court and have that be mediated somehow. Okay? So that's another example of civil law. Now, also the thing about civil law, you guys, is that what is the punishment in a civil case? Yeah, fines. So a punishment is a fine or monetary damages. So like I said, as an example, you know, JT breaks his leg, loses his football scholarship, and that football scholarship was worth, you know, maybe $200,000 over the course of 4 years. He could sue for $200,000 And then he could also sue for maybe pain and suffering, that, the fact that he wasn't able to play football in college, and so maybe he ends up with, $500,000. So those would be his monetary damages. Okay? All right, the other thing about civil court, you guys, is that the way to, figure out if who is responsible is that there just has to be, trying to think of how to put it legally, there is a preponderance of evidence. And on the jury, it's usually just a majority. All right, so let's take a look at question number 3, State of Connecticut versus Tully. What is that an example of? Criminal, okay, and we know that because it's the state. What makes something a crime, you guys? I mean, this is what's a little bit tricky with going back to what Louis said in the beginning. I mean, you can be criminally negligent, which then puts it into the criminal category, but it has to be way worse than just like making a mistake. Like you had to maybe purposely have made a mistake in, I don't know, what was the example you gave, like performing surgery or something?
Yeah, anything like that.
You know, because the thing is that what makes something a crime? What do you?
Deliberately breaking the law?
Okay, yeah, deliberately breaking the law. I mean, you can kind of commit a crime and not realize you committed a crime, but what were you gonna say?
Well, the book says violating the statute that has been enacted to protect public health, safety, morals, or welfare.
Yes.
What if you like by accident hit someone with your car? On a job.
Manslaughter.
Wait, hold on. What did you say? You said public?
Oh, yeah, public health, safety, morals, or welfare.
Public health, safety, morals, and what was the other one?
Welfare.
Welfare. Okay. And what did you say?
If you like hit someone with your car and they die, but it's like completely by accident.
Yeah, completely by accident, then it's by accident, and it's, I mean, there's different degrees of, I guess, homicide. I mean, there's, trying to think of the proper terms. I mean, there's what's known as manslaughter, where if you killed somebody, but not on purpose, by mistake, then, yeah, you're not prosecuted as a criminal.
So then what do you want, like, what's your punishment?
Well, you might not have a punishment.
Really?
Yeah. Although, you wouldn't have a criminal punishment, but what could happen though, actually, is you could be sued civilly. So, let's say, for example, you by accident, kill a father of a family of 4, and he's the sole breadwinner in that family. And so, now they have no source of income, and, Emily was the one who hit this man. Sorry. So Emily, gets sued in civil court for basically being negligent in her driving. And so she could be forced to pay monetary damages to this man's family because now they've lost his income for, what would have been the rest of his natural life. So take, for example, I mean, the perfect case for this is O.J. Simpson, which I don't know how it's been so long ago now. I don't know how familiar you guys are even with that case. But as you guys know, he was accused of killing Ronald Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson, and they, in the court of law, in the criminal case, he was found not guilty. So nothing happened to him. However, he was sued civilly by Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman's family, and he was found guilty in civil court and was required to pay monetary damages to their families. Because, I mean, it sounds awful, but everybody has an economic worth. I mean, if your parent or somebody in your family were to die, and they were, gonna live 30 more years and make $100,000 every year, that's how much money? 30 years, $100,000, you could do the math, I mean, that's a sizable amount of money that that person was worth. And so that's why you would sue, to basically recoup that. Does that make sense? Another reason why you would sue, let's say you get you buy a product and it's defective and you get hurt using that product. And let's say you buy a hair straightener and you very, very, very severely burn your right hand and you have now no more use of your right hand and that product was completely defective. What are you gonna do? You're gonna sue that company. Why is it important for you to be able to sue that company? What does that mean should happen in society?
Accountability,
Who is accountable?
the company.
The company. So hopefully, what will that mean for their behavior, their actions?
They'll do a better job in the future.
Yeah, they'll do a better job in the future, or we hope.
They could investigate, like, if they're following regulations and following rules or. They could recall those straight.
Yeah, and they could recall the straighteners. But if you think about it in this sense, though, you guys, does any company want to be sued? No, they don't want to be sued. So what incentive does that provide them?
To
Make better products the first time around, right? So they're going to test that hair straightener numerous times to make sure that, if you use it properly, you're not going to get burned.